I had always been proud of my son, Daniel. He was the kind of boy every mother dreams of raising: intelligent, hardworking, and respectful. After his father passed away when Daniel was 12, it was just the two of us. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to put food on the table and pay for his education. I missed school events, birthdays, and even Christmas dinners, but every sacrifice was for him. When Daniel grew up, he became the first in our family to attend college. I cried when he got his acceptance letter to a prestigious university. I still remember standing at the bus stop with him that first day, holding a small bag of his favorite snacks and a note that said, "Make me proud, son." He smiled, hugged me tightly, and said, "I already am, Mom." Those words carried me through the toughest years. But time changes people. Success changes people even more. Years later, Daniel had become a successful financial consultant in the city. He married a lovely woman named Sophie, whose parents owned a chain of high-end restaurants. They were polite but distant, the kind of people who wore their wealth like armor. I had only met them a handful of times, usually at quick family gatherings where small talk was polite but shallow. So when Daniel called one evening and mentioned a dinner with Sophie's parents, my heart fluttered. "They invited me too?" I asked, trying to hide my excitement. There was a long pause on the other end. "Actually, Mom," Daniel said hesitantly, "I was going to ask you to stay home this time." My heart dropped. "Stay home? Why, sweetheart?" He sighed. "It's just this is a formal dinner. Sophie's parents will be hosting some business partners. It's not exactly a casual family thing. I don't want you to feel out of place." I forced a chuckle. "Oh, Daniel, you don't have to worry about me. I can behave myself, you know." He hesitated again. "Mom, it's not that. It's just, sometimes you can be a little, old-fashioned. You might not know what to say in those kinds of conversations." Old-fashioned, the word stung like a slap. "You think I'll embarrass you, is that it?" Silence. That silence told me everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Please, Mom, I just want things to go smoothly. I'll come by tomorrow. We can have dinner together, just the two of us, okay?" And just like that, he hung up. I sat in my small living room, staring at the faded wallpaper I'd never had the money to replace. On the coffee table sat an old photo of Daniel in his graduation gown, smiling proudly with his arm around me. I touched the frame gently and whispered, "I guess I'm not good enough anymore." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd stayed up sewing his clothes because I couldn't afford new ones. The weekends I'd cleaned houses so I could pay for his textbooks. The times he'd cried as a boy and I'd held him, promising that one day life would be better. And it was for him. By morning, my sadness had hardened into quiet determination. If he didn't want me there, fine, but I would not sit home feeling pitiful. I would show him that I wasn't some helpless old woman who didn't belong. I decided to go anyway, not to cause a scene, but to remind him where he came from. I spent hours getting ready. I wore a modest navy blue dress, one Daniel had once complimented at a family event. I brushed my hair, put on a touch of makeup, and even polished my old shoes. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a poor widow, but a woman who had endured, survived, and loved fiercely. I took the bus into the city. The restaurant was one of those fancy places where even the doorman looked expensive. I stood outside for a moment, heart pounding, debating whether I should turn around. But then I saw Daniel and Sophie walking toward the entrance, laughing with her parents. I swallowed my nerves and called out, "Daniel." He froze. When he turned and saw me, the color drained from his face. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I smiled, pretending not to notice the irritation in his voice. "I thought I'd surprise you. You said it was a big dinner. I didn't want to miss it." He glanced nervously at Sophie's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Collins exchanged a look I couldn't quite read, half surprise, half discomfort. "Mom," Daniel whispered sharply, "we talked about this. I told you to stay home." "Yes, you did," I replied softly, "but I've never missed an important night in your life. I didn't plan to start now." Sophie tried to smooth things over. "It's okay, Daniel, she's already here. Maybe she can sit with us for a bit." But her mother frowned. "This is a business dinner, dear. It might be inappropriate." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at me with frustration and pity all at once. "Mom, please go home. I'll call you tomorrow." The words were sharper this time, like knives. People around us were starting to glance over. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. "I understand," I said quietly. "Have a nice evening, sweetheart." I turned and walked away before anyone could see the tears in my eyes. I didn't go home right away. I wandered aimlessly through the city, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoing from restaurants and cafes. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since morning, so I ducked into a small diner on the corner. It was the kind of place that smelled like coffee and memories. The waitress smiled and pointed me to a booth. I ordered a simple bowl of soup and a cup of tea. As I stirred the soup absent-mindedly, a man at the next table spoke. "Rough night?" he asked gently. He was older, maybe in his 70s, with kind eyes and a weathered face. I smiled faintly, something like that. He chuckled. "Join the club. My daughter just told me I'm too embarrassing to come to her art show. Guess we old folks are out of fashion." That made me laugh, the first real laugh of the night. Seems we have something in common. We talked for hours about our children, about how life changes when they grow up. He told me he was a retired teacher, widowed for 10 years, living alone but content. His name was Henry. Before we left, he said something I'll never forget. "You can't force your children to see your worth. Sometimes you just have to live your life so brightly that they can't ignore it." I went home with those words echoing in my mind. Over the next few weeks, I decided to make changes. I joined a local community center, started volunteering at a library, and even took a painting class. For the first time in years, I did things just for me. Henry and I kept in touch. We met for coffee, shared stories, and laughed like old friends. He encouraged me to start a small storytelling group for seniors where we shared our life experiences with local schoolchildren. It became a hit. The kids loved hearing real stories from real grandparents. I even started a small online blog, Grandpa and Grandma Stories, where people could share wisdom from their elders. To my surprise, it went viral. Local news outlets covered it, calling it a bridge between generations. One evening, about 3 months later, I received a call from Daniel. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling, "I saw you on the news. You're amazing. I had no idea you were doing all that." I smiled. Well, I figured if I was too embarrassing to go out, I might as well make a name for myself at home. He was quiet for a long moment. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was so wrong. I was trying to fit into Sophie's world and I forgot where I came from." Tears welled in my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "You were young once, Daniel. You'll learn what matters most." Then he said something that melted my heart. "We're hosting dinner this weekend. Sophie's parents will be there again, but this time you're the guest of honor. Please say you'll come." That Saturday, I wore a simple green dress and brought a homemade pie, Daniel's childhood favorite. When I arrived, everyone greeted me warmly. Sophie hugged me first. "You've inspired so many people, Mrs. Miller," she said sincerely. Even her parents were gracious and polite. During dinner, Daniel stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank my mom," he began, "for teaching me the true meaning of strength, humility, and love. I once thought she'd embarrass me, but now I realize I was the one embarrassing myself." Everyone clapped, and I couldn't stop the tears from falling. After dinner, Sophie's father approached me privately. "You raised a fine man," he said. "You should be proud." I smiled softly. I always was. Epilogue. A year later, Daniel and Sophie had their first child, a little boy named Henry, after my dear friend. Every Sunday, they come over for dinner, and I tell little Henry stories from the old days, stories about love, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Sometimes Daniel just sits quietly, watching us, eyes full of regret and gratitude. And every time he leaves, he kisses my cheek and says, "I love you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me." I smile and reply, "A mother's love doesn't give up, it just waits until her child remembers."